look up at the monitor. I see Alex Smith, Executive Director of America Rising PAC, AmericaRisingPAC.org on Fox News. Send her a text. She came right across the street. Thanks for joining us in studio.
Thanks so much for having me.
We are on the eve of the second Donald Trump Supreme Court pick, and I think it's
very
funny.
Exciting.
The Never Trumpers have to be at some point. They have to at some point come around and go, look, you worried that this guy was going to be some phony progressive, hiding, under a suit and tie. I would say that was almost everyone else on the stage, besides Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. But he gave us Neil Gorsuch, and now we're looking at people like Amy Coney Barrett, who the Democrats, for all their talk about not having religious tests, put her through the ringer. And you know what's funny is that if he picks her, she will not be seen as a woman when it comes to the confirmation. They will go full Bork on her.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because everyone, is pulling their hair out over this process. The Democrats are just lighting themselves on fire. And the president, to his credit, gave us these names in advance. He worked together with groups like the Federalist Society and other
the Heritage Foundation.
The Heritage Foundation, people who believe in originalism and textualism. And he said, put together the best list of jurists that you can put together. And they put together these outstanding lists. This is the same list that he chose Justice Gorsuch from. And it's the same list that he's looking at right now with these exceptionally qualified names. So I think that, people are looking, the president was transparent. He said, this is who I'm going to nominate. And the Democrats are saying before he even says who that name is, we're going to stop it. Elizabeth Warren says, #resist. We're going to stop the president. Cory Booker said that the president can't choose a
Senator
Supreme
Pedicure?
Court. Senator Twitter. The president can't choose a nominee until the Russia investigation is over. He's not entitled to a Supreme Court pick.
You know what's funny about that? Now they're saying that they're going to give payback for Merrick Garland. What they refuse to discuss and what the media refuses to remind anyone of is that the Merrick Garland thing was payback for George H.W. Bush, because the Democrats, led by Biden, said, you're not picking a Supreme Court justice during an election cycle. And then, of course, Bill Clinton won, and he picked Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's kind of amazing how the Democrats forget the standards they set or the precedents they set when they get a little taste of their own medicine. It's kind of like Harry Reid saying, well, 60 votes. I want 51. And as soon as the Republicans take the Senate back, they go, 60 votes. No, wait a second. You guys changed the rules. I'm sorry. We're leaving those in place. But there is some very, I know a lot of conservatives are not excited about Brett Kavanaugh because there's a skepticism about him coming out of the Bush inner circle because we got John Roberts and David Souter, and there's a lack of trust there, let's just say. But there are some really great conservatives, and I still think, and I hope the president is still considering Mike Lee, because Mike Lee would be a fantastic pick.
Sure. I think that any of these that we're looking at on the list would be absolutely fantastic for anyone who believes in interpreting the Constitution according to its original intent and interpreting laws not according to some policy agenda that the that the judges feel should be enacted, but as they're written. I think that the problem with Democrats is that they have viewed the Supreme Court for too long as just another set of politicians. These are just, it's another.
If we can't get our way in the legislative branch and the executive branch, we'll judge shop until we get ourselves a circuit judge. Then we'll put it before the Supreme Court. No, great case law precedent, new law.
Exactly. And I think that, what conservatives are saying, and I think why we have the stronger leg to stand on here, is we're not asking judges to interpret the Constitution according to a conservative ideology. We're asking our judges to interpret the Constitution according to its original meaning. And, I think that...
But that is the conservative way.
Of course.
So to the progressives, they're going to say, well, original intent and originalism is a founding principle of conservatism, which they reject.
But, it's interesting because you take someone like Justice Gorsuch, who, by the way, sided with Justice Kennedy, on all of the major decisions of this term. He actually, if you line them up side by side, they agreed with each other about 85% of the time. So for Democrats who are, who again threw the same tantrum back during his nomination and said it was going to be the end of the world. It's apocalyptic. We have Justice Gorsuch. He's going to take away everybody's rights. We have someone who's actually pretty in line with where Justice Kennedy was. And I think where Justice Gorsuch, is such a strong jurist is that he does believe in that originalism. He does believe in that textualism. And by the way, that actually results in some victories that liberals like, or some decisions, I should say, that liberals like. And I think that it goes to show that we're not speaking about a particular ideology. We are speaking about fidelity to the conservatism. That is something that we believe in to our core. Judges should be looking at each matter that comes before them according to those standards, and not from the viewpoint of what does this constituency think and what does that constituency
How is history going to judge us?
Exactly.
Well, see, and the funny thing is that if you're a true constitutionalist, you are to a fault. So let's say you're a social conservative, constitutional conservative, and someone says, well, what about gay marriage? The immediate response, if you're being honest, is, well, it's not mentioned in the Constitution, right? So why is the government involved at all? And see, if you apply it to a fault, to its truest boiled down form, progressives will find themselves with victories by default. If we say, well, why is there a Defense of Marriage Act? Why are we even talking about this as a function of government? If you want to if you're going to say that marriage is a civil institution or a religious institution, but nobody is barred, if the government gets out of the way, any two people can draw up a contract of their choosing, two consenting adults, merge their lives, merge their property. Or you say, well, what about taxes? Yes, what about taxes? Why are we paying different taxes simply because we married? Or what about hospital visits? Right. Why are we doing that? That it opens you up to all the other problems created by government, which most conservatives, want the government out of the way. And liberals will find themselves, they might not find, you're right, some people won't bake you a cake. You're right. Someone might not bake you a cake and they'll send you somewhere else. But on the major issues of your life, if we agree to the 10th Amendment, you can set up marriage any way you want in California, right? You could set up student tuition any way you want. You could set up public education any way you want. If some progressives look at conservatives, look at people like me, look at people like you, and they go, you know what? Maybe I don't want to have coffee with these people every day, but in their world, there is the space that we're asking for. If we agree to get rid of get government out of the way, that's what I tell people about what conservatism is. Look, we don't have to love everything that each one of us does, but if we agree that the government is not the best avenue for solving all problems, more government power, we find that, we're pretty good at limited self-government.
I mean, I think that that's exactly right. That's what we're hoping for in these jurists. We're hoping for someone who approaches the Constitution in a limited way, which I think is speaking to originalism. It's speaking to textualism. And
the founders, I think if you asked Benjamin Franklin about marriage, he probably would have looked at you and said, that's between you and you're in your county or you and your church. This is not what we're doing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Democrats, they are considerably less organized on this issue, and liberals in general, because they, unlike conservatives, do not have a guiding principle on this issue. We have a guiding principle on this issue as conservatives. We know what we want in a jurist based off of principles that we hold very dearly, whereas liberals respond to policy results. They view the court as an instrument to affect change on a policy level, and so that's why,
which is outside the constitutional order, because it says right there in Article 1, Section 1, all laws, all legislative authority will be vested in a Congress.
Exactly.
Not some of the laws, not shared making powers, all the laws. Anyway.
Oh, and that's why I think that the response has been so disorganized. I think that that's why, when, you mentioned before, in terms of the Democrats bringing up what they call the McConnell rule and saying that we can't vote for a justice, during an election. They were immediately refuted by everyone from the Washington Post fact checkers to, a number of different people out there who said, wait a second, President Obama during a midterm election, he had a Supreme Court vacancy. He nominated Justice Kagan in May, and she was confirmed by August. So even if you were following the so-called McConnell rule,
which is based on the Biden rule from before that.
Before that applied to a presidential cycle. We're talking about a midterm cycle right now. And I think that the Democrats, this really just goes back to the heart of their of their disbelief still, and their inability to accept the fact that President Trump won in 2016. He now has not one but two Supreme Court justices that he can appoint, and they don't know what to do about it. And I think that they're in real trouble because coming up in the midterm elections, we have 10 senators in states that the president won. These are 10 Democratic senators. 5 of these states, the president won by double digits. So the
potential is pickups.
Yes. So, if you're Elizabeth Warren, you could do #resist. You can go off and have an incoherent strategy. You could be Cory Booker and saying the Mueller investigation has to be over because,
how is that even a standard? Like, how is that even when did, it's one thing if you say, wait a second, and even it's not a standard. It started with George H.W. Bush. They said, you might be the outgoing president. Let the people decide who should be, right? Okay, but he's still the president. Right. If there was a question about whether or not war was going to be declared on 11:59, whoever that commander-in-chief is on 11:59, even if he's not going to be commander-in-chief 1 minute later, he's still the man with the finger on the button. But they did it first and didn't like it when it was brought back around. But even if you want to find a little bit of the logic in there, that okay, the potential here is that the president will be voted out on this issue, whatever. The idea that the Mueller that the president cannot exercise his authority as long as Bob Mueller is investigating obstruction, collusion, not collusion, whatever he's doing now, process crimes, that's idiotic.
Well, I mean, see, it's a convenience that someone like Cory Booker sitting around thinking these deep thoughts about the judiciary and about the presidency, he can afford to do that. Someone like Joe Manchin can't, because
John Tester,
Heidi Heitkamp, Claire McCaskill, and Bill Nelson, those last two I just mentioned, did not vote for Justice Gorsuch. So now they have to go back to their constituencies potentially. Let's just say they're going to vote against this nominee. They have to say, okay, I just voted against this nominee. I voted against Justice Gorsuch. I voted against the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I voted against ending Obamacare. And the constituents are going to say, and you say that you represent my values? For the last Supreme Court pick with Justice Gorsuch, we were able to bring over 3 Democrats. So I am optimistic that given the politics of this midterm cycle, that we'll be able to do the same. We'll be able to peel away some of those votes. But this should be a layup for these midterm Democrats. The problem is, though, is that they're terrified of their liberal base. They're terrified of their liberal donors, that the second that they do anything that's remotely supportive of this president, that the money's going to dry up, that the enthusiasm's going to dry up. That's really what this is coming down to.
Well, I'm waiting to see if it is Barrett. I remember Janice Rogers Brown, and we've been saying I don't want to get involved in ageism, but if you're looking to put someone on the court who's going to be there for 20 to 30 years, Janice Rogers Brown is almost 70. The NAACP, now all these groups came out against her, and she was a black woman that President Bush had nominated to the federal courts. And there was no talk of, well, she'd be a black woman, right? It was being a black woman only matters if you come, when they say women and minorities, what they really mean is liberal women and minorities. So, Barrett is not going to have the credibility of being a woman. And then let me add to this, and I think this is something that really separates conservatives and progressives. They want a Supreme Court justice who brings all of their personal baggage to, especially in the case of Sonia Sotomayor, brings all of their personal baggage to a ruling. So if they're looking at something, and if it's victim and oppressor, which is how everything looks to a progressive, they want the court to have an empathy rather than, okay, what does the law say? Right? The law says we have immigration law. The law says these people have broken the law. The law says they must be deported. They want those justices to look right past what the law says and feel something, and then create a mandate out of that from the highest court in the land. Conservatives want judges who don't bring all of that emotional baggage with them and say, what does the law say? What is our duty here? Our duty is fidelity to the Constitution. Our duty is fidelity to the rule of law. If they are presented with a law that is passed that violates the Constitution, they are to overturn it and send it back to Congress and not replace it with a law of their choosing, like Obamacare. This is what conservatives want, but progressives want the opposite. They love the fact that John Roberts gave them Obamacare because he felt something. Right? We heard that John Roberts was worried about his view, that where he'd be judged in history, all of these things. Well, you're going to be judged in history for taking on the role of legislator, which is not the job of a Supreme Court justice.
Well, and it also, I think, it further illustrates the absurdity of the Democrats' claims that the fact that the president gets a second Supreme Court pick, the fact that they say it's going to be a conservative pick, I say it's going to be a pick who believes in originalism and believes in textualism, and that's why we like that person. You know, they say that everything's going to come crashing down, everyone's rights are going to be taken away, and everything's going to blow up. Okay, well, I think that Chief Justice John Roberts has proven himself to be someone who is very mindful of how the court is viewed. I mean, agree or disagree, that has been his, his sort of diplomacy that he brings to this court. And we've not seen the court swing in any major direction.
Now, let me add to that. See, that's the thing. 5-4 rulings, is involved. And that was usually Kennedy, right? If someone was going to jump to the other side, it was likely to be Kennedy. Going into 2020, I think if we're being honest with ourselves, Breyer and Ginsburg may also be stepping down at some point. The potential here, I think the Democrats are worried about, is that he might have a 7-2 court. That if one of the conservatives breaks with Sotomayor and Kagan, that still leaves a 5-4 or a 6-3. That you can lose, if you have that extra justice, perhaps even 2, you can lose 1 and still win. They're not going to have that nail biter, what's Kennedy going to do anymore, if you've got 5 solid conservatives, 6 solid conservatives, potentially 7 solid conservatives with 2 liberals.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that we can only focus on what's in the here and now right now. And the fact is that we have a list of qualified people. Any one of them is going to interpret the Constitution and the rule of law according to how it's written and according to its original intent. And we're not going to have the same kind of emotional, policy-based considerations that you've described that have infected liberal jurisprudence, or lack thereof, for so long. And this is why conservatives, have such strength on this issue. We speak from a guiding principle. And the fact that we have spoken from that guiding principle for years means that we have groomed a federal judiciary that is a bench that is incredibly deep. That when the president came into office and he, talked to Senator McConnell and said, all right, I have some judges I want to appoint here. It was an embarrassment of riches. We have so many great justices or so many great jurists to choose from, that our bench is deep, whereas the Democrats, in terms of their own feelings on the law, they don't have that same guiding principle. So then when it comes up for a Supreme Court fight, conservatives prepare by saying, okay, this is how this person ruled on this, which demonstrates their commitment to the Constitution or demonstrates this legal principle. You could see for example, just take any one of these, jurists. You could look at their opposition to the expanding administrative state, for example, as a check on executive power. We can speak about things in those very, sort of like legal structured terms, whereas liberals come at this from, the hysteria of Planned Parenthood. Oh my God, everyone's rights are going to be taken away. We're going back centuries. Everyone's going to die. and
everyone's going to be illiterate, sick, and dead.
Yeah.
Starving.
And I think we could see after the confirmation of Justice Gorsuch, nobody has died as a result of that confirmation, as that I know of. We're going to nominate and confirm someone who's equally as qualified as Justice Gorsuch, and I think that it's going to be a terrific pick. And I think it's an opportunity for people in the country to learn about judicial philosophies and learn about our system of government and deeply understand why it is that conservatives believe what we do. I think that that's sort of lost in our soundbite driven world today. And I think that this is a great opportunity for conservatism and conservative ideals through original jurisprudence to be on display.
All right, I got to leave it there. So just real quick, AmericaRisingPAC.org, what do you have coming up with America Rising?
Well, right now, America Rising is on the forefront of the Supreme Court pick. We are going to be out there and ready to remind Democrats of the promises that they're making to their voters about supporting the president and then coming to Washington and doing a separate thing. So we're going to be there to remind them that they have to support this pick. But otherwise, we are out there with our tracking team. We are following Democrats in different states. Right now, our favorite question to ask Democrats, I'm giving you a head start, Democrats, so listen up. We like to ask you if you support abolishing ICE. And the results have been
and hilarity
absurd.
Ensues. Yeah.
Absurd. We had one candidate,
Clark, that guy Arkansas,
Clark
who didn't even
Tucker,
know. Oh my God!
He pretended like he didn't know what ICE was.
Can you find that on the Washington Free Beacon website? It's right there on the front page.
That was our tracker.
That's embarrassing. That I watched that, and I'm like, really? You're running for office and you don't know what immigrations and custom enforcement is? That would be like running for mayor of the city and not knowing, who the police chief? I don't know who he is.
Yeah. Andy Kim, who's running for Tom MacArthur's seat down in New Jersey's 3rd district, he pretended to take a phone call after being asked 16 times whether or not he supports abolishing ICE. So this is a disastrous issue for the Democrats, and they know it, and they're running. So
do you have that audio? It's right there on the that is unbelievable. It's not there anymore. All right. We'll play it. We'll play it another time.
It's a great video.
Yeah, it's on Free Beacon. You don't see it there. It's some guy with a baseball cap on in Arkansas, and it says, "It's Tucker, right?"
Clark Tucker.
Clark Tucker.
I'll pull it up on my Twitter account here. I have it. I could send it over to somebody.
We'll get it. This is professional live radio.
I got my start in radio, so I'm trying to help out here.
Well, I didn't know we were going to be playing this audio, but anyway, if we don't have it, we don't have it. It's all right. It's right there on the Washington Free Beacon website. It's embarrassing. He basically says, "I don't." All right, it's on her Twitter feed.
Just search Clark Tucker on Washington Free Beacon, CLARKE.
Yeah. All right, we'll take the break. We'll play it when we come back. We're going to wrap it up in the next segment. Hand it off to Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and Breitbart News Tonight. We're right, they're wrong. It's the end of the story. The arguments on this radio program cannot be broken. Sirius XM Patriot.